A little girl and her family came to the seaside for a holiday. Suddenly they noticed that something was wrong with the cruise ship on the sea. Before they could react, the giant cruise ship was already rushing towards them. Seeing this, the family quickly ran away. But the cruise ship was like a steel beast. In the blink of an eye it rushed right in front of them. At this moment they had no idea what was happening. They could only temporarily return to the villa they had rented for their holiday. But when they returned to the villa, they found that all the electronic devices in the house had lost their internet connection. At this point they still had no idea that a massive apocalyptic crisis was about to unfold. Since they couldn't connect to the internet, the children went to bed early. Only Jack and his wife were still awake. But just then, the sound of someone knocking on the door suddenly rang out. This instantly made Jack realize something was wrong. Someone knocking on the door in the middle of the night was definitely unusual. So he quietly picked up a wooden stick for self-defense and cautiously opened the door. To his surprise, it was a father and daughter, who happened to be the black landlords renting his villa. It turned out that the area where the landlords lived had experienced a widespread power outage, and their home internet had also mysteriously gone offline. They didn't know what had happened, so for safety's sake, they had come to this remote old house to take shelter. Since it was already late at night, out of humanitarianism, Jack invited the father and daughter into the house. But just then, a piercing sound suddenly came from the TV, announcing that the country had entered a state of emergency. Everyone realized the seriousness of the situation, but since it was already late at night, they had no choice but to return to their rooms to rest, planning to go out the next day to see what had happened to the town. However, what they didn't know was that, just as everyone had fallen asleep, the television suddenly picked up a signal and began broadcasting an emergency news report, stating that the world was under attack by cyber hackers. The next morning, the young daughter went out to play in the yard out of boredom, but then she witnessed an incredibly eerie scene. She noticed countless wild deer slowly approaching her home. The story began to grow increasingly mysterious. The old man in the villa also realized he couldn't just sit idly by. He decided to drive to his neighbor's house a few kilometers away to check. However, when he arrived at his neighbor's house, he found it in complete disarray, with large pools of water on the ground. Fortunately, after searching around, he luckily found his neighbor's satellite phone. However, the satellite phone had no signal either. In search of a signal, Old Black immediately walked towards the nearby open beach. Little did he know that as soon as he arrived at the beach, he found a valuable watch on the ground. He tried to pick it up, but instead pulled up a severed arm. This instantly startled the old man. As he stood there at a loss, he suddenly saw an out-of-control plane hurtling toward him from the sky. This instantly terrified him, and he hurriedly ran toward the neighbor's house to take shelter.